The 102nd Illinois General Assembly completed its work for the spring during the early hours of Saturday, April 9th. The early adjournment, almost 2 months prior to the usual May 31st adjournment date, allows legislators to focus on their re-election campaigns ahead of the June 28th primary election. During the 2022 spring legislative session, over 2,600 bills were filed compared to the over 7,000 bills filed in 2021. This excludes resolutions and constitutional amendments. Several bills introduced in 2021 were also considered during the spring. ISACO engaged in legislative advocacy on behalf of counties throughout the abbreviated legislative session. This included taking official positions of support or opposition on legislation 115 times during the 2022 spring session. Following adjournment, ISACO began working on our post-session materials to share with county officials and staff. We've also shifted our advocacy to the executive branch with several letters requesting that the governor sign ISACO-supported legislation into law. This video presentation provides a general overview of the more consequential and relevant legislation approved during the second year of the 102nd General Assembly. The General Assembly is not expected to convene again until the fall veto session. ISACO will continue advocating in support of ISACO-introduced legislation with the intent of advancing those bills later this year. Thank you for your continued support of ISACO. It's our privilege to work on behalf of Illinois County officials. Please feel welcome to contact us if we can be of service to your county. The House and Senate worked through the night on Friday, April 8th and into the early morning hours on Saturday, April 9th to debate and approve the state fiscal year 2023 budget prior to adjournment. The state fiscal year 2023 state budget appropriates $46.5 billion in spending and anticipates revenue collections of $46.53 billion. Higher than expected state tax revenues, along with a significant infusion of federal COVID-19 relief dollars, has resulted in the state fiscal year 2023 state budget possibly being the first truly balanced budget in almost 25 years. House Bill 900 is the appropriations bill. House Bill 4700 is the budget implementation bill. Senate Bill 157 is a revenue omnibus package that includes several tax relief provisions, none of which are anticipated to negatively impact local tax collections. The tax relief includes a temporary suspension of the scheduled inflationary increase to the motor fuel tax. There's also a 10-day sales tax holiday on school supplies in the month of August. This bill also includes a temporary one-year suspension of the sales tax on groceries, but not pharmaceuticals. Reimbursements for local units of government from the newly created Grocery Tax Replacement Fund are also included in the bill. Also of note is a one-time property tax rebate of 5% of a homeowner's property tax bill up to a maximum of $300, and a one-time income tax rebate of $50 for single filers, $100 for joint filers, with an additional $100 for each dependent, not to exceed 3 dependents, for taxpayers based on their adjusted gross income. Each of these budget and revenue bills have been signed into law by Governor Pritzker. The state fiscal year 2023 budget contains some good news for counties as a result of persistent advocacy by ISACO and our municipal partners. The county share of local government distributive fund revenue as a percentage of state income tax collections will increase from 6.06% of individual income tax collections to 6.16% of individual income tax collections. While this modest increase is well below the official 8% target sought this year by ISACO and our municipal partners in the LGDF coalition, the additional revenue is welcome, and ISACO appreciates its inclusion within the state fiscal year 2023 state budget. ISACO will continue to work with our coalition partners to restore LGDF distributions to the full 10% that had been received by counties and municipalities at the beginning of 2011. Please read our policy brief for additional information about LGDF revenue. Criminal activity is on the rise and will be a significant issue during the 2022 election. The General Assembly debated several policies intended to address rising crime. Republicans were unified in calling for the repeal of the Safety Act, and Democrats introduced several bills intended to address crime while keeping the provisions within the Safety Act intact. Democrats have indicated a willingness to make minor amendments to the Safety Act with an eye toward easing compliance. Some of these technical changes are included within Senate Bill 2364, which was approved by the House but not voted upon in the Senate prior to adjournment. It may be considered during the fall veto session. The anti-crime bills approved by both chambers include training provisions, a ghost gun ban, expressway camera expansion to 21 additional counties, a gun storage campaign, a sunset extension for existing eavesdropping laws, first responder mental health programs, funding for first responder child care expenses, funding for local governments for mental health and substance abuse prevention for incarcerated or recently discharged individuals, financial support to address carjacking, a task force intended to focus on crime reduction, funding to establish anonymous tip hotlines, and provisions to address retail theft. ISACO didn't take a position on any of these bills. I'd like to highlight 4 of the bills approved by both chambers during the spring legislative session. House Bill 3138 creates the Judicial Circuits Districting Act of 2022 and divides several judicial circuits into subcircuits. This bill was signed into law in January 2022. House Bill 4489 would amend the Grant Accountability and Transparency Act to provide that the requirements established under the Act don't apply to awards, including capital appropriated funds, made by the Illinois Department of Transportation to units of local government for the purposes of transportation projects utilizing state funds, federal funds, or both state and federal funds. ISACO supports this legislation. House Bill 4772 would create the County Design Build Authorization Division in the County's Code to provide that a county may enter into design build contracts. Nothing in the Act prohibits counties from using a qualifications-based selection process, which was a provision included to remove initial opposition to the bill. ISACO also supports this bill. House Bill 4132 would codify into law an existing Illinois Department of Revenue regulation exempting local governments from the parking excise tax. ISACO supports this bill. ISACO has written letters to the governor asking that he sign House Bill 4489, House Bill 4772, and House Bill 4132 into law. This legislative update covered the more noteworthy legislation approved by the General Assembly during the spring legislative session. For a more complete accounting of legislative action, please visit our website at www.isacoil.org and review our Bills of Interest to Counties approved by both chambers in 2022 report. This 23-page report includes a summary of the legislation and is updated to reflect actions taken by the governor. We also encourage you to contact us to sign up for our frequent ISACO News and Views e-newsletters if you're not currently receiving these important updates. ISACO's website includes many valuable and informative resources for county officials about relevant legislation and public policies.